Well, thank you for being here. Thank you for coming to the Undressed Podcast. Let's have a good time and some really open, honest, raw conversations with each other. We're going to talk about the topic in a second. I mean, all of you guys know it already. But before we start, maybe we start with you to share your name and whatever you want everyone here and everyone out there to know about you for a second.
Okay. Hi, I'm Daniela, and I work with and on relationships, I think, for the last 10 years. That's my passion. That's what I do in my everyday life, diving deeper into connection. Yeah.
Nice.
Hello, my name is Malin. I work in startup operations for a day, but I also do a lot of leadership development and personal development coaching with my teams as well.
My name's Lauren. I'm from the UK. I've been in Bali 4 years, and I have a eco co-working space in Bali.
My name is Joe Mattia, and I'm a father. I've lived in Bali for just around 3 years now, and I'm a psychonaut, and I have a passion project. It's Psychedelic Times, so that's a little baby of mine.
You're like, what, a psychonaut?
Psychonaut,
What's
yeah.
that?
It's someone who is an explorer of plant medicine and psychedelics.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay, that makes sense.
Hi, my name's Adam. I'm Welsh Egyptian. I left the UK in 2005. I've traveled around the world doing multiple different things. Currently teaching meditation, yoga, health and wellness retreats, and been based back in Bali for about 3.5 years.
My name is Ryan. I'm from San Diego. I'm a naturopath. I run a functional medicine practice, and I think Sasha asked me to be here because it's a lot easier to be in a good relationship if you don't feel like shit all the time. And if you have good energy, good mood, good sex drive, and so those are a lot of things I work with people on. And if you feel really lousy, probably not going to be the best partner to your significant other.
Yeah, that's true. And then they might break up with you.
That's it.
Which is pretty much the topic of today. And I thought there's so many different ways how we can open this up. But it's nice to have a little bit of a polarizing yes and no in the beginning. So I'm going to go around again. So we start with you, Daniela. Can breakups ever be mutual or not?
In my opinion, not 100%.
Okay.
Yeah, I have to agree. No, it cannot be.
I think no as well. I think it's usually one person wants it more.
Yes, I think so.
They can be mutual?
I think so.
Okay, cool.
You know, we can talk more about that, obviously. I think
Yeah,
that's the point.
well, I hope so.
Yeah, that's the point. But I think it's possible. And I'm curious, actually, because all three of you said yes, so I'm thinking, like, was it mutual? So, yeah, we'll come back
I originally thought yes, and then I started to reflect on it before the podcast, and I came up with no from my past experiences. So I'm looking forward to seeing if, like, why it's a yes for you.
Yeah, I don't think it's black and white, yes or no. It's like a spectrum. So it's a trick question. I'm going to just go with neither yes nor no. It's in between.
Playing the
This
middle.
diplomat here,
Yeah.
right? He's right off the
Yeah.
bat.
Well, listen, like someone could be 90% out as far as wanting to leave the relationship, but they could still have feelings and love for the other person. And so it's not like they're 100% out, and other person can have similar things in a different ratio. And so I think that it's just, it's a complex matter.
So do you think, like, if two people actually, like, they're sitting on a table, it's like, hey, I want to break up with you. The other person's like, oh yeah, actually I want to. Because that, to me, that kind of feels like, okay, yeah, it's mutual. It's like, yeah, it kind of makes the most sense. Like, but there's still this one person who brings it to the table and says, like, I'm done. I'm out of this. It's not like you have a conversation like, do you think it's a good idea to break up?
Yeah. Well, are you asking if this is possible or if it's like the norm? Because I think it's absolutely possible. I mean, there's so many billions of people in the world, dude. Like, there's definitely been some people in the history of humanity who have both been like, fuck this. We're both better off away from each other. We're out.
Yeah.
But I don't think it's necessarily like commonplace.
Yeah. Yeah, because the exception doesn't prove the rule, right?
Exactly.
So we need to like generalize a little bit.
Yeah. So if it's like, has there
So
been
yes or no?
a mutual breakup? Yeah. There's definitely.
The answer was yes.
Yeah. In like the history of humanity, I think there's definitely been mutual breakups.
Okay.
But I think it's very rare.
Yeah.
Hmm.
I don't. I mean, yeah, I don't think it's mutual either. I think there's always one person, as you said as well, like who has a little bit more of takes the initiative, has this power in her hands, in his hands, and it's like, okay, like look, I'm out of this. Like we're transitioning into something new. So there is a degree of it's not 100% mutual, in my opinion. Cannot. Like
Even
I don't think
before-
two people at the same time come to the place and it's like, what do you think? Should we break up? And it's like, yeah, I was just about to ask you the same question. You know.
What about if you call it conscious uncoupling? It's
But
got
that
to be.
happens
It's got to
after,
be mutual.
right?
I don't
That's
know.
like then the transitioning out of this relationship into something new. But the initial breakup, I don't know. What do you think? The whole conscious uncoupling. I mean, people make a whole ceremony out of this.
Yeah.
But
I think
it's
it's-
usually conversations before you make that decision, right? So again, it doesn't mean it's mutual.
Yeah.
When it's happening.
So it's more like one person
Somebody's
helps the
crying
other
through the
person to
process.
like go through.
There's always one starting to take the decision of not putting the energy in the relationships. Even before the decision is taken, someone starts pulling their energy to other places and not into the relationships. Already there, it's not mutual.
So it's that first choice to back out, not mutual, because one person chose, and then it starts leading to that, which could then become mutual once that person realizes, oh, I'm out. You feel the
Yeah.
withdrawal or whatever. Oh, wow, you're out? Okay, I guess I'm out too. And then it's
Yeah, 'cause as
Conscious
soon as it's
uncoupling
just one
time.
person. Yeah, as soon as it's just one person working for the relationship, it's already over. Unless you can bring that person back in, right? So the conscious uncoupling is just like, now it's happened. How do we make the best of
right.
our lives separate?
Mhm.
What's your take on it?
I mean, I have two relationships to draw experience from. One is with my son's mother, and I was very young. I was in high school, when she got pregnant, and we spent 5 years together. And I chose to end that relationship, and it was my choice. I actually very distinctly remember I went to the Jacob Javits Center in New York City for a workshop with, it was a seminar with Tony Robbins, Robert Kiyosaki, and Donald Trump. And they were all the keynote speakers. And Tony did this thing. I didn't even know who he was back then, but he did this thing. Oh, everybody, you have a decision you need to make, and you need to make it. And he walks you through this whole process. What if you don't make the choice? Look at your life 5 years from now. Look at your life 10 years from now. And I went through the whole closed eye process, and I was like, oh my God. And I drove home from that thing. I called this girl I knew. I said, hey, I'm in a moment of clarity. I'm breaking up with her tomorrow. Remind me in a week or two. Like, tell me, because I need strength. I know it's going to be tough, but this is the truth. I'm done. And give me your cousin's phone number, because she said I was cute. I want to talk to her because I would never cheat, and I knew that that would make it impossible to go back. So I just immediately made a plan, and I went home. I woke her up the next morning. I remember just tapping her on the shoulder in the morning because I was so excited by the clarity, because I was kind of like, oh, what do I do? It's my son's mom. I don't know. I shouldn't do this. Should I do it? And I was like, hey, we've been struggling. It's over. I love you, and I'll help you, but you need to leave. 2 weeks. I'm going to leave. And it was just ultra. And she was like, what the fuck? It was kind of disruptive, to wake up, and I'm excited, about this new life. So in that case, it was very clearly my choice, and she would have stuck around and struggled with me for a long time.
Yeah.
And we would have been in that. In the second relationship, it felt mutual. We exhausted trying, like you were saying, when one person stops trying, a lot of nuances. I mean, it's not black and white, but I felt we were both trying for a really long time. We were together for 11 years, and we did a lot of various therapies, including plant medicine and MDMA therapy, all these different things. And then it just became clear one day for me. And then I said it to her, and she was like, and then she was like, okay, thank you. Wow. One of us had to do it. So that felt mutual to me. It felt just like we were like one organism, and it was like, and then we divided, and it felt mutual. I'm sure she'd have a lot to say. But I'm curious, actually. I don't know. Maybe I'll ask her. But it felt mutual to me. Felt mutual.
Yeah. And this is your baby mama, right?
No. So
that's
this
the
woman
other
helped me raise my son. So I spent 11 years with her. So I ended that relationship with my son's mom. And then 2 years later, this woman came and she helped me raise my son, and a really epic journey. We really had an incredible relationship. And then, 11 years. It was interesting because my son had sort of become of age, and it was almost as if that was our karma, was to like raise him. He went off into the world, and we just started, well, what's next for us? And that was, I can talk more about it, but that's what happened.
Sounds kind of mutual to me. Right?
I'm really curious to hear her perspective after, because that was in 2019. We split up, so it's almost 4 years now. And I'd be really curious to ask her, yes or no, was it mutual? How did that happen?
Yeah.
I'll report back. I'll let you know. But I think it was mutual, and I feel after that we did some conscious uncoupling. It happened to be right around our 11-year anniversary. We rented this hotel and we made love, and then and slowly started.
Wait. So, So wait a second. Let me you guys broke up.
That's right.
Then you go into a conscious uncoupling ceremony type thing. You rent this hotel. You're gonna make love. And then you just the next morning you go separate ways, and that's about it.
I think a part of what kept us together so long was we had really good intimacy. We were really into each other, and the lovemaking was better and better year after year. And so toward the end, it was even better. It was just so confusing, and so. There may have been a slight little sex problem somewhere in there, we could have missed appointments, making love and things like that. So there was something that we needed to complete there, and we knew that we had to do that. So yeah, I rented a hotel, and it was our 11-year anniversary, and we were breaking up. When we made love, and then I left.
Now I want to know exactly how she feels about this mutual breakup.
Yeah. There was a lot of little struggles in between. We saw each other once a month after that for about 3 months, and every time we had sex, and it was okay, this is really not conducive to breakups. And then finally, it was okay, this is it. We need 3 months, no communication. And of course, if you're untying 11 years, there's always something, business, taxes, something. But we really did a good job. And then it was 3 months, turned into 6 months. And then finally, and I basically had to move to Bali because there was just so many overlaps.
Yeah.
So that was, complicated, I guess, because, you spend that much time with somebody. Every mutual friend, every place you go, everything is a part of that container.
Yeah.
So I moved to Bali, which she didn't want to do, and it was perfect. She wanted to go to Costa Rica. So it was opposite sides of the world. It was the furthest 2 points I think we could have been, So that allowed the space for the new chapter.
Yeah, nice.
Yeah.
I don't feel I have to even ask anything, because obviously you might have you definitely have a bunch of opinions.
That's not about opinions. It's more about my own experience.
Go
So
on.
I ended up all my relationships. So I was always the one who made the decision.
You broke men's hearts.
No. No, but I think it can feel mutual at one point, but like you said, you have this thought for so long, and you live with it, and you think about it, and at one point you sit together and say it's not working anymore, and then it can be that the other one is oh, you broke my heart, I want to stay in this relationship, or the other one doesn't want to feel rejected, and you say oh, of course I feel the same. So, and my last long-term relationship, I was married before, and we were together for 7 years, and we really wanted to make this work, but we couldn't, and I made a decision that I take out my energy because we couldn't make it work, and I want to see, okay, why? What is the point? Why can we come to this point? And the beautiful thing is, the relationship never ends. You just take out one part or 2 parts, maybe, and then we come to conscious uncoupling. That when does the breakup start? Is it already when you feel you're not in the right place anymore and you need to change some things, or if someone is announcing, I take my energy out, so when does the breakup start? When
Do you
does
have
it
an
start
answer?
for you?
Or is it an open question for the table?
I would give it as an open question.
You kind of already mentioned it, right? It's like as soon as one person kind of removes itself.
Yeah, but I'm not sure if a lot of people are even conscious that they start doing that.
Yeah.
So it's like, when does it start? When are people actually aware? And I'm a little bit curious because it sounds like you both had situations where it's been very clear, like, okay, now I'm out. I don't think I've had that in longer relationships or in deeper relationships. It's always been like a longer process of trying to figure things out. So it's not really been that clear.
For me, it wasn't clear.
Okay.
No, it was 1 year trying, understanding. And I came to this point that I wasn't myself anymore because I was trying so hard.
Yeah.
And that's when I decided. But it was always a conversation. I never just decided for my own. It was always a conversation like, I'm not myself anymore, and I need to step back and find out who I am, that I can be, or that I can show up in this relationship. And as long as I don't know who I am anymore, this wouldn't work. So, and on the journey to find myself, it became clear we can't make it work together. Yeah. So it was a long process to
Yeah,
finally break up.
my
Mhm.
experience is similar. I had a relationship of 6 years, and the last 2 years I was trying and bringing up conversations, and then when I finally ended things, he was really shocked, as if it was news.
Oh yeah.
And I couldn't believe his reaction. But yeah, it took 2 years of trying, and then when I got to the point where I was out, there was no going back.
Mm.
And you lose yourself, as you say.
And that's, for me, is the super interesting part, because how can someone not feel it, that you're not 100% there anymore?
Yeah.
Because it's comfortable.
To not say it?
Yeah. It's so much easier to live in this illusion. Everything is great and perfect, and we have rainbows and butterflies and unicorns. Then facing reality is like, oh man, that relationship, the dynamics, the principles that I want to live in my romantic relationship, they're so off.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I've been there too. I've been my first 6-year-long relationship. We should have broken up after 3 years.
Mm-hmm.
And I kind of allowed myself to be lulled in again. And then we just went through a whole nother cycle of, now looking back at it, made so much sense. We should have just ended right there, right?
Yeah. It's kind of like the old paradigm was like, just stick with it, right? Like, I think a couple, maybe 3 generations ago, it was just stay. Just people would just, the relationship was maybe over, but they would just stay.
Yeah.
And this is like sort of the new, the new ways to
I would say 1 generation, actually. My parents.
stay.
I mean, they were happily married and whatnot, but but I feel like in that relationship, maybe that's also in depending on where you were born, like the culture that you live in.
Right.
Yeah.
But east of Germany, like communism, like you don't really go through divorces. It's
Right.
like you stay together.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, my parents have been together 49 years now.
Wow. Happily? Are they happy?
Yeah.
Yeah.
They've had their moments, of
Mm.
course, but yeah, they're best friends. They have separate bedrooms, which is interesting. But yeah, they're really happy.
I think
Why
that's
is
a
that
key. I think, I'm sorry.
No, please.
I think that's a key. I didn't know that. I was so offended by that my ex would say, we would dream like, oh, our house, our perfect thing. And in that dream for her was, oh, we'd have our own rooms. And I'm like, to me, that was like the ultimate failure. You know, I'm like, my family's like Italian and like old school. And I'm like, what? But now, you know, the perspective, and it's funny because I had a conversation with her like, you know, a year or so after, and I was like, you were right. That actually is quite wise. And then you can have sleepovers. You can always be with that other person, but it's a choice. Because I kind of like to wake up and do certain things right away. I like things a certain way. She likes to go to bed at a certain time. I need less sleep. So actually, I think if you can afford it, that's a really, maybe why it's lasted so long, you know, is that they have those two spaces. I think I think that's a key for me in a new relationship.
It is.
Yeah,
there's a lot of evidence showing sleeping in separate beds is very good for your sleep quality.
Mm.
Like co-sleeping for partners, not great.
Mm.
Do you sleep together with your partner?
I do.
He's this guy who's optimizing everything in his life.
Well, if I had sleep challenges,
Yeah.
because like, you know, she was moving and waking me up, or something was off to where I wasn't sleeping well, I would immediately, because we have plenty of extra bedrooms in our house.
Yeah.
So it's not a space thing. It's just that we sleep together really well.
Yeah.
But that's not the norm. A lot of couples don't. And we have like a big king size bed. So it's a lot more space than other people might.
Yeah.
So we both sleep great. But in general.
I have a friend that they have two sets of sheets. So they sleep together, but they both have their, you know.
Yeah, so we do that. We have separate blankets.
Yeah.
That way, like, if you're moving your blanket, it's not fucking up the other person.
Right.
And that's great.
That's a nice
And
line.
she likes to, you know, pile on about 15 inches thick blankets, you know, like heavy weighted blankets. Just like, I'll sweat my ass off if I even have a foot in there. Yeah. So I like a thin, more of a sheet type blanket. And so different body temperatures definitely require different blankets. And we have this like mattress pad that runs cold water through the mattress coils. Okay. So you could set the temperature of the mattress pad. It's called a chili pad. Game changer.
Wow.
So you can set one side, like I like my side, like really cold. She likes her side warmer. Both people happy.
Wow.
It's fantastic.
Yeah.
How long have you been together?
Close to a decade.
Wow.
Yeah.
Congratulations.
Yeah. Thanks, man.
That's beautiful.
So it's the chili pad.
So that's the secret.
That's it. Well, people can sleep well, then everyone's happy.
Yeah, man. If you don't sleep well, that's definitely a problem for any relationship, right?
That is.
Adam, tell us what's happening. What breakups, and because you've been together with your partner for what, like 13 years or whatever?
Yeah, 13 years now.
Can you even remember your last breakup?
I can very well, actually.
Okay.
Yeah. But it's funny because even before my wife, I had a long-term relationship for 3 years, I think it was, around 3 years. But the breakup was basically, we were living in Ibiza and she wanted to move to Tenerife. We moved to Tenerife and I hated Tenerife and went back to Ibiza for the summer. And she wanted to stay in Tenerife, I wanted to stay in Ibiza. And that was just the end of the relationship because we knew that we couldn't make it work because there was no way I could be in Tenerife. She was an Ibithienka. She was from Ibiza and she just couldn't live in Ibiza anymore. She had to make a new life. And it was mutual to a point. I felt like it was a mutual separation. Like the distance was just naturally like happening between us. And then towards the end of the summer, we hadn't spoken for a couple of weeks because I'd met someone and been intimate with someone. And she was like, call me up. We haven't spoken for ages. She's like, what's going on? How are you? And she's like, have you met someone? And I said, yes. And she just burst out crying. And that was when I knew that it wasn't mutual at all. And that was a rough feeling. But we'd fully broken up. Like it wasn't anything. I was correct. But it still broke her heart.
Yeah.
Which wasn't a nice feeling.
Yeah.
And with my wife, after being together 13 years, I mean, our connection was like instant. Like as soon as we met each other, it was like explosion. And we literally just molded together. We trained together, worked together, performed together, slept together from like 3 weeks into our relationship. And we have pretty much been inseparable since. Becoming parents in the last, Joe knows what now, he's going to be 4 in July. Definitely the sleep affected our relationship massively. And that was the big shock for me about becoming a father was we spoke about this, but like all of our intimate life and all of the love that I would receive from my wife has just gone into our son. And then both of our sleep has been disrupted, and it was just a whole new dynamic in the relationship. And I was observing, like, because we've been together for so long, I was observing how easy it would be to step away from the relationship and withdraw. However, I made the commitment, we're married, and I knew that we both signed up for the long haul. And when you have, like, we made the commitment that when we had a child, we were just going to stick through it no matter what happens, because we knew that we had a solid foundation to build on that. Like, we both love each other and we have a really good communication, but having a child on top who climbs into bed with you and wakes you up all night, it's challenging. It's definitely challenging. So when you're sleep deprived, it makes the relationship that much harder. Yeah.
I was just thinking because there's so many different ways how we can break up, right?
Mm-hmm.
Is there a good way to break up? And what are the worst breakups we have experienced?
Are we going there?
Yeah, of course. I mean,
Should I start?
if you want to.
Okay. Well, mine is still quite new, 2 years ago. The worst one was the ex who I was living with during COVID, just basically kissing me goodnight, saying, I'll see you in 4 weeks, I'm going on a business trip, and then never coming back.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah.
And at that point, everything was lovey-dovey and kind of nice.
No, I started setting more boundaries because we started talking about getting a lot more serious. And that clearly didn't sit well. So, yeah. So he moved to Bali.
And now you're Bali.
And now I'm here. So, yeah, that was definitely my worst one.
Is he still here?
He just moved back to Singapore with his wife. So, yeah.
No.
I've ended most of my relationships not to not that it was easy though. The 6-year one was really hard for me. I kind of broke my own heart. I really wanted it to work, but I had to accept that it wouldn't at some point. It took me a long time to move on from that because I also had to live with making the decision.
Isn't that empowering though? No?
It's hard seeing, like you just said, seeing somebody's heart break and knowing it's your fault. It's really tough. So, yeah, that was hard. But in regard of like the worst type of breakup, I would say ghosting. It's like disappearing. It's just the worst. Like if people can't sit in front of you and have the strength to communicate, then I think that's the worst. If they just disappear, you're just left with questions.
So it's more like all these answers that are not given, like why, and that's what makes it so hard, or that you basically have been together with a guy that doesn't even have the character to break up in a decent way.
Yeah, I mean, I haven't had a super long-term relationship in the past 7 years. I've had things like a year, or like things that have been a bit on and off. So I haven't had like that full experience. It's been more like in dating. So it hasn't really destroyed me in any way. But I just think it's quite cowardly when people just disappear.
Yeah, I agree. Right, it's terrible, right?
Bet you've done it.
I think more than that.
Ooh.
No, I don't think so. No, I think even when I've been in, sometimes because of the distance, it kind of like I'll try to make sure I break up like in person.
Right.
Like at least have that decency and talk to that person that you've been together with for like X amount of months, years, or whatever, and have that integrity to talk to this person face to face, right? And sometimes that might not be possible. Then like, don't send a freaking text message. At least have a phone call or FaceTime or whatever. I don't know. I think I'm just like a little bit more old school in that regard, and like make that at least a little bit of that extra effort because you're gonna break someone's heart. Yeah. I think for me the worst one was when I was just going through this I mean, worst one. I guess it's similar actually. We're having a little bit of a fight, and we're in the car going to my grandpa's birthday. And then she asked me this question. It's like, well, do you even love me? And I really had to stop for a second. I was like, no, actually, no, not anymore.
Oh.
You know, and that was like that car just turned black immediately, you know. And she just like, I had to stop. She ran out, and like, you know, it's like, look, take the car. I'll figure out everything else. Like, you know, just go home. And but that was kind of a tough one because it was in the moment, and I didn't even expect this to happen. But that question was just that question was just like it almost like caught me a little bit off guard, and I took that moment to breathe, and I was like, I mean, if I don't say it now, like whenever am I gonna say that, you know? So that wasn't even planned, which was kind of new to me to have such a breakup.
Did you still go to the birthday?
Well, I went. It was my grandpa, okay. And she just took the car and went, like, you know, moved out same day. It was like, yeah, it was pretty much black and white. Okay, we're done. Yeah. 1 year of no communication. And I didn't like it, to be honest. I thought, I don't know how you guys feel about this, but I understand that some people like the no communication for a certain amount of weeks or months or whatever, but I felt like a year of not communicating at all, it's almost like throwing 6 years that you had together completely out of the window, and not having like a certain amount of respect for that, and trying to together, like this conscious uncoupling or whatever, to move into a new paradigm.
Yeah.
And what I just observed in this 1 year is like, well, there's no relationship anymore. There's no friendship anymore, because like you're moving so far away from each other, like energetically, you know, there's nothing.
So you
to
were
move
6
through.
years together.
Yeah.
She proposed the question. You
I said-
gave the answer, and then you split.
And
You
then we
maybe
split.
had like a conversation or something. She packed up, and that was it.
Yeah.
And then 1 year.
And 1 year she didn't want to communicate with me,
Wow.
just to get over it.
Right.
You know? I was like, and I respected
Of
that.
course,
it's
yeah.
not what I wanted at all.
But it doesn't feel
But
like
it also-
integration, right? Like you spend all this time.
Yeah.
There should be some
Yeah.
kind of. Yeah. There's no one way to do it.
No, and I just like, since she was the one who, you know, was very heartbroken, I was like, okay, if that's what you need. It's not
Right.
what I would desire, but fair enough.
Yeah.
And then did she reach out?
Not really. I mean, now we still have common friends, so sometimes there's this moment of, you know, just the other day, like I'm still very, very close with her brother, you know, and he was here in Bali, so they're having a FaceTime, and then all of a sudden I was like in the phone call, I was like, hi, but it was like, there's not a lot of love, you know, it's just like, it's a strange person, like a stranger. Yeah. I don't know if that makes sense. But you have very interesting, we talked about this. I would love for you to share this whole piece of the energetic, like completely moving away from each other and cutting it off.
Let's start in the beginning. So my biggest heartbreak was I fell in love with my first love at 17, and we had this crazy roller coaster relationship for 18 months. And the breakup was horrific. Like I was just heartbroken and devastated. And I went off the rails and went into the party world for about 3 years. And luckily I went to Koh Phangan, Thailand, and did some plant medicines, and that actually helped me recover massively. And we would keep in contact, and I kept traveling around the world. And about 3 years after, we bumped into each other, and we ended up hooking up that night. And it was the worst. It was like, it just felt so off energetically. It was horrible. And then I didn't see her for another year, and we bumped into each other again, and she was flirting like, oh, let's do it again. And I was like, I'm gonna just like, we're done. And I remember telling her, like, I'm gonna remove you and block you from social media because I don't want to see you. I don't want to have anything to do with you again. And then I had some in-between relationships over the next couple of years before I met my wife. And when I met my wife, she was just coming out of a long-term relationship, and my previous ex was still kind of in the picture, messaging me a little bit. And she just said, look, if we're going to go deeper into our relationship, her personal boundaries were she doesn't have contact with any of her exes. Like they're just not around in any way, shape or form. And I was like, but I've shared so much love with this person. I was like, we're not intimate. There's no sexual attraction there, we're done. And I asked her to explain to me why, and she went deeper into the conversation of like, it's just that energetical connection of being so intimate with someone through your sexual energy. She said, for me, if I'm going into a more serious relationship, I just don't want that leak of energy. It's like, it's not necessary. She said, for her, all of those relationships came to an end for a reason. Like, and I remember there's this, I don't know why this stuck in my head when I was a kid. Someone said to me, exes are like fireworks. Like, if you light the firework and it doesn't go off and explode, you don't go back to have a look. Like, that's the number one rule of fireworks. Like, don't go and check. And after a bit more time in contemplation, and I actually bumped into, when I went back to my family, I bumped into a previous ex who I really broke her heart. And it was the most horrible feeling ever. And she was messaging me on Facebook, and I decided to send her a message and say, look, I'm going to just like remove you from my friend circle so we don't have this, you know, checking out my pictures, me looking at her with a new family, just all this weird energetical stuff. And after about a year of being with my wife, when I knew it was more serious, I then actually removed and blocked all of my exes from all social media accounts and deleted all of their telephone numbers. And that was probably a decade ago. And for me, like, all relationships are like different and unique, but for me and my relationship, it worked. It was just like a clear, everything, like the past is done. We're like wiping the slate clean and starting again. And it works. Like, for us, it worked.
Yeah, thank you for saying that.
Wow.
What do you think?
I mean, it works. You know, it's you're fully committed and you're in.
Yep.
And you guys are committed with the kid, and I respect it. That's what I say.
When we talked about this, I was like, yeah, but you know, there's all this love,
Yeah.
and right? It's
But what about in situations where you have a child with your ex and you can't cut them off?
Oh, for sure, that's different.
Yeah.
100%.
But I also underestimated this cut. Like, I had a long friendship with my husband, and we ended up our romantic relationship, but we were still close friends. And I would say he's still the person who knows me the most, the best. He just needs one word from me. But also we came to this point where we said, hey, also we need to set boundaries for our friendship, because as long as you are still in my life as this person and so meaningful to me, my actual partner doesn't have any chance to come closer to me.
Yeah.
And when we changed this, my relationship changed also.
Yeah.
So it was kind of sad because I lost my best friend also.
Yeah.
But yeah, changed a lot.
I'm gonna go with you. It's not black and white. There's a lot of ways to do this.
Yeah.
But when you remove all the noise, it feels like there could be a lot more success. And like with social media, I mean, that's new, right? Like a decade or two ago, that wasn't even a thing.
Yeah.
You would stay in touch with someone from another country for the next 20 years and intimately know what they're doing. Like,
Exactly.
and so it becomes it's a leak. It's leaky energy.
Exactly. And that's the way my wife described it. It's like, that's you know, it's a very strong connection when you share like that sexual chemistry with someone. And I'd broken someone's heart really badly, and I know that she would always look at my pictures. Like, she'd go through all my pictures, she'd see me with my new girlfriends, and it just felt sticky and uncomfortable anyway.
Right.
So yeah, wiping the slate clean, it worked for me in this relationship.
yeah.
Yeah.
Isn't it though? That's kind of her responsibility, though, right?
In what sense?
Yeah,
Can you elaborate?
like if she looks at your photos and if she's like, you know, liking all that stuff and whatnot, that's not 100% your responsibility. I love the fact that you're kind of like having this consideration around that.
100% it's her responsibility, but when you see the notification of a like come up, or you just know that they're kind of like stalking your profile a bit, and I knew that she's still like, but like really had strong feelings for me.
Yeah.
It just felt good having a clean, like wiping the slate clean.
Because it helps her to move on.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But it must also make a difference for you, because you don't have the reminder of that name all the time. Like, things coming up from the past all the time.
Exactly. Because there's always, like, as soon as you see that name, it jogs all those memories. And it still happens now. I'll hear a certain song and it will remind me of a time space with one of my exes. And it's like, that's enough. I don't want to see any pictures of their new life. I wish them well. I hope they're happy and healthy, but that's it. Like for me, it's like we had our moment together, and I don't need to drag that big, heavy backpack of my past with me. I'm all about letting it go. Like it's gone, you know? It's like everything's impermanent.
Ryan, you've been quiet for a little while.
Yeah. Well, I don't have a ton of personal experience because leading up to the relationship I'm in now, I didn't have any very serious long-term relationships where I was like super deep with someone else. So any exes from the past don't really have these same type of feelings for. And going back that far, I feel like I wasn't even on social media. So
Yeah.
it's a little different.
Yeah.
A little different. So, but I have seen, just reinforcing everyone else's stories, different things work for different people. And I think you just got to analyze, is maintaining a connection with this person a net positive? Because there's always going to be pros, there's always going to be cons, but if it's a net positive, then it makes sense.
Yeah. I have a question because you said you kind of lost your best friends. How long are you together now with your current partner? 3 years. And so you lost your best friend, but you found a new partner, pretty much. So would you continue to do it this way, or what? I mean, it's a stupid question to ask, but like in that case, I'm actually curious. Like, have you thought about that? I was like, well, now I have this partnership. I want to commit to this new partner. But what if it doesn't work out? And now I lost like the person that knows me the most, knows me the best. I just have to say one word, and all of a sudden, like, what's that whole thought process behind that?
There's a little bit more in it than just friendship. So for me, he was on the friendship side, and I also could see that he was in new relationships, but I could see still his behavior of maybe at some point we would just be together. So, and that's actually what I trust. This, if we are meant to be, we would be together, or maybe we will be together. And if not, I can't lose anything. So if we don't have any contact, or he's not my best friend anymore, or we are not in contact like best friends anymore, it is not meant to be, because if it were meant to be, we would be together. Does it make sense? Does it answer your question? It's like I'm in this moment, it felt like I lost my best friend, but also it showed me how dependent I was on this connection.
Yeah.
So it helped me actually to take my energy back and reconsider where to spend my energy, and also to see, okay, he becomes freer, I become more free, and if it's meant to be, we will see. So at the end, I didn't lost really anything.
Yeah.
And even if my relationship wouldn't work out, so if it's meant to be, then we can just take on.
What do you think about? Yeah, okay, I get it. What do you think about breaking up and then getting back together again? I know you guys are not really but part of the conversation, but you probably have opinions too.
Like fireworks.
But like, like fireworks. Is that your way? Like once you break up, like you're done, or?
Yeah, I think for me it's
So no sex with your ex?
No. That's done. That chapter is closed.
Yeah.
I'm very clear about that.
Yeah.
It's better to be clear about that. Even if there is some wiggle of ambivalence, I have the overriding no. Like, I made a choice. That chapter's closed. That was 11 years. And now we're moving on. And I had lunch with her over the summer. I was traveling in America, and I had texted her a few times. I was quite nervous, actually, to go to lunch because I hadn't seen her in, 3.5 years. And, and then, when I met with her, because of this sexual connection, that I was kind of like, I don't know, like, what's this going to be like, But it was actually really, she was like an old friend. And we laughed and we had stories, and kind of felt bad a little bit for her in that moment. She seemed she was going through like a lot of stuff in her personal life, and I walking away from it was like, wow, that was all always there. And I was just so in it. And so it just was like even more clarity of like, no, that's, I would never entertain this. I feel like graduated. I say that with respect to her, but I don't mean it to put her down, actually, because I really, really wish that she find peace with the personal things that she was going through. But it was just like, I was like, gonna solve and fix all these things. And I was just like, sitting there like, oh shit, I don't want nothing to do with this firecracker. I'm not gonna try to ignite this thing and fucking no. I think it's really good to just finish and complete and move on. And it's good, like in your case with this best friend, because I think you both get the opportunity to, like, that energetic is cut and that person can go fill their life with someone, because you're never going to fully fill his desire to be in a relationship because of, you know. So I think it's just really healthy. And sometimes one person, and I guess it's back to the original question of like who chooses or is it mutual? So if one person is strong, it actually helps the other person that you care and love about. You wouldn't have been in a relationship with them if you didn't. Hopefully it's nothing too crazy while you're breaking up, but it's just a mismatch in some way that you can honor and respect that other person, maybe be strong, and then all of a sudden they can find something that's more harmonious, better fit for their life. So I think, now, that being said, I'm sure there's an exception where someone got back together and it's all rosy and lovely.
You know, my auntie and uncle, they were married. Then they got divorced. They split, they, did their own thing, both in Berlin. And then they remarried. And they're like happily married up, like, for many years now.
Okay.
And it's like totally the exception of the rule.
Okay.
But generally speaking, for me, I'm like pretty much the same. And I've done this mistake once, going back, and because everyone was talking about this, like sex with the ex is the best and blah blah blah. And I'm like, it just felt so like, what did you call it? Just heavy. It just felt so wrong. It's like going back into an old chapter, like reopening all these things that are there, rather than keeping that close and moving on into like a new way of relating with each other. It just becomes so messy all of a sudden.
Mm-hmm. I think it depends though, because your uncle and aunt's story, I think people can evolve and change, and sometimes time apart can give you that space to really sort out some shit.
Sure.
And then come back to the relationship and not have the same unhealthy dynamics that caused it to end in the first place.
Yeah.
Because I know probably 5 or 6 people, just thinking off the top of my head personally, that have had that story. Not necessarily married, but that they were together, they broke up, they got back together, and they're still together and happy to till this day.
Yeah.
So, granted, a handful, kind of, I don't know how many hundreds of people I've met in my life it's not a ton, but it is. It is very possible.
And I do believe it is possible. I think, though, it needs a lot of time in between, whatever a lot means.
Mm-hmm.
Like these relationship loops of breaking up and getting back together again and breaking up and getting back together again. Like, that whole loop is just like, it's so damaging.
I just remembered that there was a softener in my split with the 11 years that I remember saying, maybe it would work out. We're just going to, I remember that being a part of, and she was like, that's bullshit. And I'm like, oh, well, all right. But now looking back, I'm like, yeah, that was just me softening, trying to get to the next step. So how do I get out of here?
Yeah.
But a little different, but yeah.
How do you guys feel about this whole, like, have you done it? Like this whole breaking up, getting back together?
I've done it. We spoke about it.
Oh, did we?
Yeah, I went back to a guy in Bali.
Right.
Terribly. Again.
But why did you get back? Like, did you go in there with this intention on now it's going to be different and let's give it another try? And
yeah, I was quite shocked at myself because I've never gone back before. And I was kind of like, I was in a really good place and we've been separated for about 6 months, no contact at all. And then I saw him somewhere at a party or something, and then we ended up speaking, and it started the connection again, and then there was messages again. And it started off as kind of a friendship, and we were talking things through, and it was kind of like conscious uncoupling kind of thing, and then it just merged.
Conscious
back into-
coupling.
Yeah.
Conscious uncouple, couple,
Yeah.
recouple.
Yeah, and he was kind of trying to woo me a lot, but to be honest, it didn't ever feel authentic because I knew he was trying to woo. So it was kind of like, this is going to stop at some point, and then it's just going to settle back into the world it was before, and it did. So yeah, for me that wasn't the best decision, but I learned a lot.
Yeah, I feel like it can help. It can help the breakup process.
Yeah.
I've definitely gone back.
Really? You
before.
think it helps the breakup
Yeah,
process?
because after a breakup, and specifically if you're not the one taking the decision, you start putting the relationship on a pedestal and you remember all the good things. And going back can also be that realization of, whoa, I don't want this. And getting that clarity that maybe the first person had from the beginning of, okay, I'm out. But really coming back can be, okay, now I know what it is I'm really putting on a pedestal and really pulling it back into reality.
I like that perspective.
Wow, that's a very interesting perspective.
In addiction recovery coaching, or in another life, I've helped people get through that process. They say relapse is the road to recovery. So it's good.
That's it, really. It seems like a bad thing to tell an addict.
Yeah.
Like, go
So
use
here's
drugs.
some drugs.
Coming back saying I relapsed. It's like, oh, you went and checked on something and you knew you didn't want it. So you're not telling them that while they're in their sobriety
That they
without
should
doing
relapse.
anything.
Yeah,
But if they're coming back to you and saying,
Okay.
hey, I relapsed.
That
you
makes
say,
sense.
Okay, this is a part of recovery. You've done that, and what did you learn? What did you see? Oh, it felt wrong. In a lot of these.
Yeah. That's some good context. Like you meant like
Yeah. Hey guys.
you gotta relapse
Just
before
go
you can
again.
really get through this.
I think it depends on how much you keep the door open for it as well. Because, like you said, if you do something that you know you can't go back from consciously, then
Like
that
crack.
changes. Like what?
Crack.
I'm talking about relationships.
Okay.
Sure.
Yeah.
mean,
I think I could see one split also being like for all these points, one split and going back. But the people that do it time and time again, that's what's crazy.
Oh,
to
that's
me.
another thing.
Where it's
that's
like,
a different topic.
Yeah,
right?
you break up,
Make
you
up,
get
break
back
up,
to,
make
yeah,
up, break up,
like
make up.
multiple times or like even dozens of times. It's like, what the fuck are you doing?
I've recently watched a friend going through this, and a different topic here, but they're related. When you have an opinion about a close friend and their relationship, and you really probably shouldn't say it, right? Just let them figure their shit out, right? Especially if it's a close friend, a bro. And at some point, I finally had an opinion. And I'm like, hey, man, this doesn't look so healthy, and they're still together. And they seem to have resolved this pattern. Last summer, it was like back and forth. And now, he's quite a close friend. And it's a little awkward, that I was like,
All you said though is that it's not that healthy. You didn't say like actually what you felt like she's not good for you.
Here we are recording. Well, I had an opinion about some things, and but the point is that you were making a point about make up, break up, make up, break. It looks like they made it through that stage currently. I was just like traveling around with them, and it looks like that chapter has closed, and they've found some harmony.
Nice.
So it's it's hard to watch, but sometimes people make it through it for whatever reason. They're working out.
What do you think about that topic, Sasha, of giving advice to a close friend? Do you just say like what
I
your
learned my
perspective,
lesson.
like let him figure it out, or do you say like this is my homie, I gotta tell him what I think because it's gonna help him learn faster, type of thing?
I learned my lessons. I feel like I've done both. I've shut up and didn't say anything, just let them go through their own stuff, and you see your friend suffer.
Yeah.
And it's like it's so obvious from the outside, and it's like it's not my life. They got to do it themselves. If he asks, I'll tell him my opinion.
Okay.
But also,
So that's the distinction. You don't give like unsolicited advice. It's only if they come to you.
if
for
I
help.
really feel like it becomes very, very painful for him, and even for me to just see that, then I'll probably at some point I will say something. But I also found myself in a situation where one of my closest friends, he's literally in this breaking up, getting back together loop over and over again. I'm like, how many more times do we have to go through this? And in the beginning, like, you know, when they break up, you're there for your bro. You tell them what you think. You tell them, like, you know, all these things are like, now finally you can see it too, right? You're confirming all these things. And then they get back together again. It's like, oh my God. Now I said all these things about his girlfriend, like, you know, and he knows it.
Yeah.
And thank God it didn't end up being a problem.
Yeah.
But I can see how quickly this actually can bring a lot of issues even between me and my friends.
Right.
Yeah.
You know?
Exactly.
So yeah, I don't know. I try to stay out of it unless they ask me. And if they ask me, then I'm like blunt and straightforward because, you know, you want my truth, you get my truth. And then do it whatever you want. And then don't hold it against me, you know? So I basically frame it that way. But if they go through, if I see the cycle happening over and over again, I just shut up. It's like, look, whatever I'm going to tell you right now, like, I don't know what's going to happen if you get back together with that woman. I'm like, you know, I better don't say anything.
Yeah.
Right?
Sometimes people have to learn the hard way anyways.
Yeah.
So even if you tell them, it's not going to help.
Yeah. And it's just hurting your friendship.
Yeah.
You know, rather than just being there for him when they need you, you know. What are you thinking?
What came up for me was behind this going back or going in the next relationship, it's always, or a coach once said to me, like, you can break up, but you will face the same challenge with the next one. So, and as long as you didn't solve your things, the next one will show it to you sooner or later. So, and thinking about this, that was what was running in my mind. It's like, okay, actually, if maybe it is possible to get your things solved and go back and be happy like your aunt. But yeah, that was my thought. Like, is it possible to solve these things and go back together and start from a different place or not?
I think it's also about what's the definition of a breakup. So if some people break up in every fight they have because they don't have the tools to clear out the fights or discuss, and that's also about finding yourself and working on yourself to get there. Or other people are really just fighting a long time, trying to figure things out together. So it's also about the people who are breaking up, getting back together. I feel like they're also more inclined to easily break up, maybe, because every time there's a fight, it's like, okay, I'm out. And then that might also be about how people see relationships and how much they're willing to or understand how to work together.
I don't know how you guys feel about. I love this topic, and I feel if I'm together with a partner, and at any point there's this like I'm out, I'm breaking up, like there's so much lack of trust in this foundation and this relationship from that point moving forward.
Yeah.
Then I'm like, hey, as soon as we have like a little bit of a challenge or difficulty, like we're always going through this like breakup thing, like I don't want to be part of this.
Yeah.
This is childish to me.
Yeah.
You know, if you go there, then it's like that's just not the maturity that I desire in my partner.
Yeah.
It's a lack of loyalty.
Right?
Yeah.
It's like immediately as soon as something comes up, you just break up, like or threatening to break up, which is even worse.
Right. Because now it's like I can't even discuss the thing. Now we're not going to move. And I like what you said with your partner was, you know, okay, we have this foundation. We're having a child. We know it's going to test us, but we're going to stick through it. And that kind of commitment is like, okay, we're acknowledging there's going to be a thing and we're going to work through them. And we're in this. We're doing it. You know, that 11-year relationship I was in had a lot of ups and downs. But there was maybe in 11 years, maybe 3 false breakups. You know, that was it. Like we never played that game. That card wasn't on the table to resolve problems. And I think that's a habit that some people just had either learned from God knows where, and they do that. And I think in the case of my buddy who was going through these makeups and breakups, he was actually quite grounded, and it was her sort of wiggling and worming. And he was like, I'm just going to hold space for this process to unfold. And he saw the long haul and saw the bigger vision of like her potential, and she's working some deep shit out, and he's just going to kind of like hold it. And it worked, actually. It looks, as of right now, like they're in a really successful, harmonious place. So, you know, I don't know. There's a lot of ways that it can go. But I agree with you, if that becomes a weapon.
Like, how can you trust that person?
Right.
constantly uses this as a weapon. I think using like the word weapon is a really good way of looking at it, right? It's so threatening, and it's just harming this relationship and the foundation of the relationship so much.
It is, and then it's also like if one of you get to a certain point where you feel like you're going to break up, like because I think both of you said you like it was a shock to your partners when you broke up with them, and you were like, I've been like telling you things are not working for a while. That might be the kind of like big, hey, wake up because this is really going to end soon.
Right.
Yeah, but I agree with you. It's not like good to get into that, like using it as a weapon all the time. But as a one-off, I think for some people it might be like, look, this is your last chance. Like we're about to break up, unless you really change your, like you just sort your shit out, basically.
Right. Like this is my truth right now.
Yeah.
I've gone to this point now. Like, can we work on this or not? Not, oh, I'm going to break up with you. I don't want to talk about this. Those are kind of two different ways of going through it.
Do you think it's a healthy way though to use that as like a last bit of a warning? It's like, hey, look, here's where I'm really at. Like, if you're not gonna sort out your shit, or the two of us, then like this is over. I feel like if you already put this out there, like this energetic thing is all of a sudden in the field of our relationship, it's kind of over.
Is it?
I think so. I'm not attached to it. Like, you know, I'm happy to be proven wrong, and I'm sure every relationship is a little bit different. But to me, it feels like it's. If I'm already thinking like this is over, unless you do or we do this, and this, it's like energetically, I feel like I'm already checked out to a certain degree. Not fully, maybe, because I don't really want to, but like somewhat I checked out.
What if it was the other way around? Like you were madly in love with someone, you do anything for them, but there was some area in the relationship that you were not fulfilling for her, and she kept talking to you about it, and you just didn't address it, and then she finally got to a point and said, look, if you don't address this, we can't continue. Because it's different when you're like from the other person's perspective.
Yeah. Well, I think if I'm, for me personally, right, if I'm in a relationship and she's bringing it over and over and over again, and I'm not listening, then I kind of have to be honest to myself, like that last bit of a thread, like if I really love her so deeply that I care, and she brings these up consistently, and I don't make these shifts and changes, then there's something deeper here at play that is not aligned. So it's more like for the other person's, like it's almost like the other person wants it more than I want it, because otherwise I would change these things, or I just don't care enough to change it. And this person is like, well, you got to really change it now, or I'm going. It's like, it's in some ways, it is a threat.
It's also in the delivery, though, I think.
For sure.
Because if it's said in the way of like an ultimatum, then
which
you
it
kind
is,
of
right?
go into your like inner child and like, well, I don't want to do that because you're making me do it. So it can kind of go into that. And if you're not skilled at communicating, which a lot of people aren't, then how do you sort of move forward from that without, you know, sometimes you can get to that point of a relationship without meaning to be there as well, because you're being defensive.
Yeah.
And like, this doesn't feel good, so I'm going to pull away.
Yeah, and it's also a balance, because like we're all perfectly imperfect, right? So there's also will always be things that people understand differently or does not understand, that this is a thing that needs to be changed, until it's very, very clear or black and white, depending on what it is, or something that you might not want to see, and you know it's a trauma to look into, but you're not ready to explore it. So there's always that balance of how long do you keep fighting with someone like that? I would also say that if it's put up in the right way, maybe that's the kind of delivery you have to give as well. And if it doesn't work from there, it's not going to work.
Yeah.
It sounds like it's a boundary thing. Like you've been like kind of come up against a boundary, and it's like, wait, this is beyond. I love you. There's a lot of things that are working here. This isn't. Do you want to continue this thing we're doing?
Yeah.
So it's a bit of an ultimatum, but it can work. It can like kind of wake someone up and be like,
It
wow,
can.
okay.
Yeah,
So
it can.
it can be lovingly, or it can be a weapon, right? So it depends on like how you're framing it. And there's a little bit of a theme, I think, with a few of us around knowing the relationship was over and then like multiple years going by before it ends, right? That seems to be kind of a theme. So maybe that, back to the original question, prompt for this conversation around the breakup and who decides, because for me, it was at 7 years, I knew it was over, but it lasted till 11. And we worked and spent so much money and so much time. And I don't regret it because I got a lot out of all that, but it was painful. And I knew at 7 it was done.
So if that happens again, do you think you would fall into the same pattern? You know, like it's done. Would you, like, do you think there's a chance that it will continue again for longer?
I had a micro relationship last year.
It's a micro relationship.
It was 2 months. It was beautiful and amazing, and I got a really clear, I don't see this, and I just let her know right away.
Yeah.
And I was like, hey, this isn't going to work, and I went right away.
Yeah.
And there's a lot to unpack there around my availability after 11 years, and that's a whole other topic. But I got a little flag, and I was like, I'm out. See you later. That's it.
So do you feel like at the 7-year mark, in the moment, you really knew, or do you know now with everything looking in hindsight and having that different perspective and all these different insights?
I knew in the moment.
Because I could see a lot of people, it's like in the moment, it's hard to really know. You don't always really, really know.
Yeah.
And then you look back years later and you're like, oh, I kind of knew. Now I realize I really knew. But in the moment, in the heat of the moments, there's a lot of doubt and uncertainty. It was a
lack of confidence and what am I doing wrong? How can I change this? Can we work through it?
Yeah.
So I was not clear 100%, but my truest, deepest self knew. And then I kind of like talked myself out of it because I was too scared to be on my own. I wasn't ready. I was highly codependent and didn't want to face whatever it was to be alone. So I was like, no, we're going to work on this.
I'm curious, in such a long relationship, how do you know it's not just a rough patch?
Well, I mean, if you want the details, I could give it to you.
No, it can also be in general.
I mean, I don't mind giving you the details because, I mean, it's specific. Like she was a dancer, stripper. She was a nude model. She worked as a cam girl. This was her work. And we had really clear agreements and boundaries around what that would be. And there was a moment where those were broken, and that, like, there was no way of going back for trust for me. Even though she brought it to the table, she told me, there was a lot of open communication, there was a lot of therapies. It just, I would never have done what she done, and I say forgive, but I couldn't move past it. It was just, no, that wasn't cool. Like, I'm in full vulnerability, holding space for this crazy fucking job you have. And this was too far.
She got into that during the relationship, or when you guys got together, she was already a dancer?
She was a dancer when I met her. Yeah. Fine. Yeah. That was definitely, it was fun,
Yeah.
This is a whole other, whatever you guys want to talk about.
I think like you brought up this theme between like you in a relationship, it's kind of long. You kind of knew earlier, like, okay, we should break up, and you end up staying much longer than you should.
Right.
It's like one of these things, you're just young. You don't know, you don't have this inner strength, this like clarity. It's like, no, here are my boundaries. Here's like what I allow, and this is what I do not allow. This is clearly a red flag or whatnot. And I think because we didn't have that like inner stability and foundation, that's why we ended up being back, like hooked in and dealing with
and there's
this.
these stories of people who make it through too, right? You're in this whole like, wait, do I abandon ship like when things get a little hard, or do I double down and figure it out? Because then on the other side is going to be this incredible life. So it's not easy.
Yeah, I guess it depends.
And when you're invested, it's tough.
Sure.
It's just like even a business, you just keep putting money into it and you're like, well, wait, and like, it's like actually this thing isn't worth putting more money into, but you just keep doing it because you're
attached.
See, but I think that's like the biggest fear, because one of the biggest regrets is that you do cut ties and then you realize you want to be together, but then they've moved on and you can't. That's, I think, one of the biggest fears. Same with the business analogy. You quit a little too early, and then you find out, maybe your partner continues without you, and then it becomes this $1 billion empire, and you're like, I could have been at the top with him, but I cut loose because I thought it was a sinking ship, but it just needed a little bit more.
right.
I also believe that we all have different timings, and I can't decide in the moment because my partner isn't there where I want him to end up the relationship. For me, it's like when I commit in a relationship, we commit both to growth and hold the container for each other. So if he isn't there, I can set my boundaries and can say, hey, that's not working for me. Please figure it out. And then I can kind of set up a frame. But also I can't decide instant in this moment. It's like, no, it's not working. Bye. And I was thinking about your story with when she asked you, do you love me? Maybe there was more conversation, but actually, what is love to you? Like, starting from there, was it really that only thing that she needed from you to end up the relationship, or was it really more behind?
I think she would have never ended that relationship one. And like I said, I tried to end that relationship after 3 years. And there was so much drama around it, though I ended up staying.
Okay.
That's how you keep them.
Yeah, literally, it was a little bit like that. But when she asked me, it was almost like there was no turning back, because it was like, if I would have given her that answer, yes, I would have lied to her and to myself. So, like, you didn't even have to go any deeper. Like, what is love? And what does it mean?
I think love is maybe love is the bottom line that you need to have in your relationship, because you have rough patches where you think, I would love to kill this person right now because it's not working, but you need to go through it. But you need to check in, like, do I still love this person? Okay. And I think that's also the commitment that you are talking about. It's like, what is our baseline?
I mean, usually the longer you're with people, I mean, the more challenges you face. I mean, we all experience hardships, whether it's people dying and just rough moments in life, whether it's, financial problems or business problems. And we've had our rough patches, especially becoming parents, COVID, being in Bali on our own. However, we keep checking in and we still love each other. Even if there's aspects of our relationship that are obviously not perfect because there's just a lot of things happening, we keep checking in and we always come back to the overriding theme. Yes, we love each other. We want to be together. And from there, we make it work. We just make it work. And it feels good to have that level of commitment with someone.
Yeah, makes a big difference. And if you don't have that commitment, it's really hard, right?
Really hard.
Yeah. Yeah, because like one stone on the left or right, and you're just like, things break quickly. Breakups. I'm very curious, actually to all of you, but maybe you as well, because that question comes up a lot. How do you get over someone? Because that's the other piece, right? When you transition through, like, what's the healthy way? I don't know, tips, advices, or whatever, to really, for someone's like, hey,
I don't have any healthy ones for
That's actually a big part of my work, helping people to get over someone. And it's a lot about changing your ways to think, because especially when you spend a long time together, you have this pattern. All your habits are mostly connected to your partner or to your lifestyle with your partner, and you need to change this. So you really need to reprogram yourself and not suppressing these thoughts, but choosing different thoughts, choosing different things to do. Really take this as an opportunity to rewire your brain. And that's the healthiest way to do it.
Okay, so no hookers and coke.
Yeah,
That's a shame, right?
I mean, I've never done those things. No, I made that choice, and then we had our little 11-year anniversary breakup escapade, and then she left, and I spent 2 weeks smoking weed every day, masturbating every day. And I just drank. I looked disgusting. I just was like laying in bed and just going to the grocery store and crying. I mean, it was like emotional about just like I couldn't go anywhere without feeling this thing. And then I kind of like, I guess I hit like a bottom, and I was like, all right. And I put a spreadsheet on my wall and I just started tracking everything. And it was like push-ups, pull-ups, sit-ups, cannabis, ejaculations, and just like tracking, and just like start watching everything. And then I started to rebuild myself and practice yoga every day, and meditation and martial arts, and so my route for healing was very physical. I just like really dove into the practices, my grounding foundational practices, which are yoga and meditation and martial arts. And that's how I really did well. And I mean, the first thing I thought, I have all these cheap little lines, but you get under one to get over one. I mean, that is a part of it. I mean, that is a part of it. I think it is a part of it to have an experience with someone who you're not going to marry and you're not going to like have this big thing with. And I had a really healing, intimate connection with a woman who knew that I was just out of a breakup, and she was just like, we just shared a beautiful, and it was very clear about, what this was. We weren't going to enter some big, long relationship. And it was really sweet of her. She kind of just like offered herself to me in that way. And it really helped, and it's not the only thing you need to do is go fuck a bunch of girls. That's not the answer per se. But if it's done in a way with thoughtfulness and that, that both people understand what's happening, I think that that's really helpful. I think I really, in my process, that was really helpful, and it happened organically. I wasn't like, going for it crazy, but it happened. So I don't know. Those are some of the things that helped me.
I think this is super interesting because I would love to hear everyone talk about this, because the way how we get over things is probably very different too how women get over things. You had some bad breakups.
So when I broke up with like the first girl that I really loved, we did the back and forth, and I literally went out on probably like a 2-week bender and did everything under the sun for that 2 weeks and barely slept. And it kind of continued for about 3 years of just being off the rails. Like I would go out Thursday to Sunday, barely sleep, and just that was also my lifestyle and my job.
Right.
Now, what I would do now is honestly just lock myself away in a Vipassana for 10 days. I would go off to somewhere in Asia or the mountains and probably do multiple until I had my shit together. Yeah, just sit in silence and sit in just immense pain and suffering until I got clarity. I think that would be the best way for me now.
Yeah.
Face it.
Yeah, face it.
Yeah.
Take away everything. No reading, no writing, no eye contact, none of my. Like the physical stuff is really beneficial as well. And that is definitely a good component, but even just taking that out of the equation, so just really get clarity. That's what I would do now.
Well, I would say Vipassana is very physical too. If
Super
you approach
physical.
it that will.
Yeah.
Right?
Just a different type of physical, a different type of physical. Like my usual physical routines, like, gym and yoga and qigong, things that I like to do.
Yeah.
Whereas Vipassana, I like to do Vipassana as well, but it just hurts so much. It's like a different level of pain and suffering.
Yeah.
And sometimes maybe creating more pain and suffering to get over the pain and suffering helps. So that's what I would recommend.
Yeah, with my ghosting ex, I did a Vipassana after. And I think the first 3 days was just processing that. And then it was gone.
Wow.
It was like, after that, it was completely gone.
Yeah.
So
Fantastic.
that really helped, But it's a painful journey.
Yeah, Vipassana was for me totally life-changing as well. So that's like when I broke up, it took 6 days, emotional roller coaster and so much emotional pain over 6 days. It was not fun at all. but I could really see all of it all of a sudden, you know. And then you have your moment of liberation, because like one of those things that the Buddha says is like, when you can see something from the beginning to the end, it becomes empty. So that all the charge is just gone, because you know, you've seen it all, you felt it all, you experienced it all, and you went through the pain and suffering on all these different layers, from, you know, anger and resentment to pain and shame and blame, and like it's all there, and then it's gone, you know. So I think that's pretty good. But the other piece that I would add to this is really taking full responsibility for everything how you have contributed to this. Because that's, for me, I think that's the easiest way how you can get out of it and transition into something new. If you take full responsibility and accountability how I have contributed to this, because that means now I put myself in a position of power and in charge, and I can change it.
Right.
And I can control the narrative now moving forward. As long as I'm like ignoring these pieces, I cannot do that. You know, I'm just keeping myself in that spiral.
I love that question of how did I create this? Because it really pulls you back into, taking full ownership of it, and also realizing that now what do I want to create next? Yeah.
I mean, the breakup is a process. It's been 4 years, 11 years, and the knots are untying. And I remember moving here, and in 2020, I'm driving on my bike, and I was having an argument with her in my head, and we hadn't spoken a year. Yeah, I mean, we spoke, but like no relationship, nothing. And I'm still trying to be right about some shit. And I caught myself. I remember catching myself like, whoa, like she's not here. Who are you arguing with? Who are you trying to be right? What are you trying to be right about? Like, and I think the Vipassana can kind of like expedite that process, because you can be distracted, and then in the, you know, isolation, you can sort of like come to that, I think, really fast, you know. Yeah. And it took me a while to get to the point where I was genuinely not charged about things, you know, and then that took time. That was like kind of like at a 2-year mark. It took me to get to that point where I was like genuinely neutral, because I would hear like, oh, she's not doing well. And there was a part of me that was like, good luck. You know, like I had that in me. But bottom line, I really care about her. I want her to do well. But there was this small me that was like, yeah, you'll never get anyone like me. And that's like quite immature, you know. And I would be in this mental battle of like, who is that guy? Like, why are you like, no, like it's been 11 years. Like, you want her to be well, not bad. Like, but there was a part of me that was like a little pleased to hear that she wasn't doing well. And that felt so bad. And now it's like, I'm not there. And so that part of it was just like this natural process of just like coming to that place of being like, oh, I'm not mad anymore. You know?
Yeah.
That's it.
Lauren, what's your way? Do you have a way? What would you recommend to your best friend?
I also have a past life way and new way. My relationship was when I was 21 to 27, so it was quite a chunk of growth time. Yeah. So when I came out of that, I kind of wanted to make up for the 20s that I'd lost. And I didn't know how to process anything. I moved to Ibiza and did similar to you. Partied a lot. And then got a job at Pikes.
Yeah, of course, I know Pikes. My friends DJ
that
there.
wasn't super supportive of a healthy journey. and then within that job, I just hit a wall, and I thought, this isn't the person I want to be. And then I left and moved to Bali. Well, I just came on a holiday actually, and then I stayed, and then I stopped drinking, everything. Went vegan, did all the yoga, meditation, plant medicine, and did that constantly for about 9 months. Completely shifted everything. So now I do those things, not the past life things. But yeah. I think it serves a purpose sometimes. But yeah, you get to a point where I think if you have self-awareness, you can't continue to do that, because you know you're just being avoidant, so it comes out eventually.
Well, Ryan, I'm not going to ask you. So, were you saying something? No, because you're the one person who is in this loving. I mean, you're basically preparing for family, and you don't go through any breakups. So it's actually, do you work with this in your practice with your coaching practice? Is that a thing? Because you talk about sex drive and these type of things with your clients in business. Is breakups a thing, like in your actual like coaching practice?
I mean, I don't like tout myself as like a therapist to help people through breakups, but inevitably, like I've worked with people going through that type of chapter in their life.
Is that also why they come to you, because they want to change their life and their lifestyle and everything else?
Yeah, sometimes. Sometimes it's like a rock bottom moment
Yeah.
where they are kind of going off the rails and had a wake up call and realize like I need to get my shit together. And not only does that involve going in and figuring out the mental game, but also not drinking like crazy and getting themselves rebalanced in terms of their physical bodies.
Yeah.
And leaning into these same practices, you know, as far as how the training and good nutrition, good sleep, meditation, all these things can really be a catalyst to work through these challenges. And then I'm a big fan of holotropic breath work. I think that's another good way to go much deeper into these things, into these places, and process these emotions more openly. That is hard when you have the ego and your frontal lobe inhibiting some of that processing. And then if I were to have a gnarly breakup, I would also seek out an expert, you know, not just a therapist that'll hear you vent every week and bitch about stuff, which I think is a lot of like passive therapy that happens. But someone that can actually give you tools and call you out and ask the right questions and help you to expedite this journey of coming to these realizations you need to come to move forward. And I think like seeking someone out that's really good at that can save you a lot of time and energy and hardship.
Yeah. And money, actually.
No, I'm sure.
I mean,
yeah, I mean, going out partying and buying Coke is not that cheap, dude.
I had like 5 or 6 male friends in the breakup, and it was very specific because I realized didn't want to burn out my resources, so I'd rotate between them. So like 1 call a week from your bros, not so bad, you know. And so like I just had that little like brotherhood that I could like lean on each one of them. But I mean, I needed help, and I was like, that was one thing I used. And it was free. It was my friends, and they knew me, and they were, you know, open to checking me where I was not taking responsibility fully for everything on my part, and just different things like that. But that was really helpful and cheap. To get 5 or 7 friends, and then you don't burn your friends out, because it's like no one wants to hear your shit every day, you know. You might need someone to talk to every day, you know, and it's a big one. So that's another little tool.
Yeah, it's a good one. Just having a good support network, right? But you know, sometimes it's great to have someone who doesn't know you as well, because they just look at things totally different.
Right.
You know, they have this 30,000 foot point view and give you a totally different perspective, because they see these patterns that are happening in a totally different way.
Right.
I remember I still have this one client right now in London, and she's going through a divorce. And it happened during the coaching program. And we basically, on the very first session, we realized you don't even want to be together with this guy. You know, 3 weeks later, he gives her the divorce papers. And so she felt what was happening, but then the big revelation for her was to realize, holy shit, like she was also responsible for all this to happen, because she should have ended this like a long fucking time ago. And she's just stayed in there, you know, until it's like way too late. And you just get complacent with the decisions that you have made a long time ago. Rather than taking charge and control and your power back and like make these shifts and changes. So for her, there was a big one, you know, to realize, shit, I allowed this to happen, and it gets to this point like 13 years in. Yeah. So yeah, friends are great, but sometimes it's nice to have someone from the outside too.
Sure.
I agree.
Sure.
I think that's an important part when you are the one who didn't make this decision.
Yeah.
To really not just looking at the good parts, like really looking at what was not working. To also, be in this place of, okay, I don't try to bring any effort in this to get this person back.
It's just part of the reframe that you mentioned, you know. You need to look at all the pieces. As you said, like, I need to know how many times a day I jerk off, and like, you know, how much weed am I smoking, and how many push-ups do I take, because otherwise you don't get a real stock evaluation of all the things that you do in your life and how they're affecting you. Yeah.
There's one question that I would love, because you mentioned, like, what is the difference? Maybe is there a difference between male and female? Like from what I know so far, is like women, when they experience a breakup, they're talking a lot in the first days, like talking with everyone, with close friends, like talking. And men, they try to distract themselves first, and then they come to the talking part. What would you say? It's like similar? Do you have similar experiences, or is it just cliche?
Go on. I'm thinking like,
I mean, from the female perspective, I have to agree, definitely. And I think it's also like, if someone passes away, for example, there is two ways. Some people don't want to know at all, like, what happened. They want to distance themselves from the information about it. And some people really want to go in to understand exactly what happened, what time of the day, who was around. And for me, for example, it's a lot of, I want to know the why. I want to sit down, I want to have the conversations, and I want to talk to all my friends about it and to really process it. And yeah, straight away after. So really getting that why in as well. Yeah.
So,
Yeah, I would agree with talking for women.
Yeah.
Is it the same for us? Also talking? I think I do talk to my closest people about this, because it's a life-changing type moment. You know, you're transitioning into something new. So it's kind of nice to have like your close people around you to, you know, because they give you comfort, they give you some sort of safety and security. So you kind of lean back on them.
Yeah,
They do talk.
in the split, there was a coach we were working with, and she was saying, you know, she was coaching me, saying, "Oh, women can tend to get over or through the emotions of the breakup faster because they're crying, they're a mess, they're just really in all the feelings, and men typically could go more physical or distracted, and." So she was like encouraging me to like really feel it and cry and like be in that place. So yeah, talking, I was doing that, but was I really feeling it and just allowing it to really, you know, come through? So I don't know, maybe that's somewhere in the differences, I think, between men and women, is that it may be a lot easier to just cry and really allow those emotions to move. And then, oh, wow, okay, I cried it all out. Okay, there's nothing else there. Whereas, you know, the other route, like, oh, I'm so busy with my work and all these other things that I never felt it. And then at some point, you're going to have to feel it, probably.
Yeah. Nice. Well, thank you. It's almost 2 hours. Any final thoughts from everyone before we close that? No, it's not a round table, but yeah. No? Okay. I'm fascinated by breakups. And if someone asks me, or if someone tells me like, oh, you know, I'm just going through a breakup, usually the first thing that is said is congratulations. You know, because obviously that means change. Obviously that means like something clearly hasn't really worked out properly. It wasn't in harmony. So going through breakup means there's some sort of realignment that's happening. And usually that shocks people a little bit. Like, either it's like, well, you're insensitive or whatever, or there's like, just, what do you mean? Like, congratulations. But I actually think, generally speaking, if it gets to the point of like breaking up, it's a good thing, you know, and approaching it that way, for me, at least personally, made it so much easier to go through these shifts and changes, rather than holding on to something that clearly doesn't work anyway.